Today's task is to replace the upper torque rod and the hydraulic engine mount on this T6 Volvo V70. Let's get stuck in. First and foremost, what we'll need is a couple of replacement parts, the upper torque rod and the hydraulic engine mount for the Volvo V70. Very similar process and parts are needed for the S60, the V60, the XC70, the S80 and the XC70, either a T6 or a 3.26. I picked these up from Berry Motor Group here in Melbourne in Mitcham. $300 for the pair, reasonable value and a great bunch of blokes. All right, some of the tools we'll need: breaker bar, extension bar, a 15mm socket to get those engine mount bolts off, selection of spanners there, some hex and Torx keys, an 8mm socket and small extension bar for the coolant tank, a T27 Trox for the under engine cover, flat bladed screwdriver, small pry bar and a pick there, and the old Makita impact driver just to make things go a little bit quicker. We've got the Swedish Queen up on a couple of poly ramps there. We're also going to be using some chassis stands and a couple of jacks just to support the engine while we're changing those mounts out and make everything as safe as we can. Okay, that's the state of the upper torque rod on the V70. As you can see, the bushing has cracked and come away from the surround. That's the first thing we need to do, get off, and then we'll dive deeper into the hydraulic engine mount. To support the Swedish Queen while we're buggerizing around with its engine mounts, I think we'll put one jack just there on that mount brace, and we'll put the big boy with a plank of wood on the sump just to hold her up and hopefully minimize the movement. All right, so that's our initial support set up. One trolley jack under the sump with a nice long piece of wood, and a smaller jack just under the bottom engine support mount there, just to brace it up. Probably moved it 20mm or so, just raise it up while we're taking the engine mount off. We'll keep a close eye on this and just make sure nothing moves around too much. Let's get the engine cover up and out of our way. Here we have the engine mount support bracket, the upper torque rod, and the main engine mount is down there, hidden behind the coolant tank. We're going to have to remove that, unbolt it, and just get it out of our way first. So for that, we need an 8mm socket, small extension bar, just to undo that one there. Okay, there's a small tab just there. We're going to have to pry that up with a flat-bladed screwdriver or a pry bar. All right, and she's free. There is a small level sensor here. We're going to have to disconnect that from the bottom of the tank, unclip it from there, just to move the coolant tank right out of our way. Okay, this level sensor wire is just hooked around there. You can simply unclip and pull it up. I will remove this just to get it out of our way. Okay, the coolant tank's free, the sensor's off. As you can see, it sits in situ. The main coolant hose does run underneath the upper torque rod, so we're gonna have to deal with that and just try and move this out of the way when we need to. So first things first, we need to get this upper torque rod out of our way. For that, there's two 15mm bolts, one here and one back there. Torque tube just comes out, and there we go. There's the issue, totally separated. Pretty knackered there. Glad we picked that one up before it got too much of a problem. Okay, the main hydraulic mount bracket itself, 3 upper 15mm bolts, 1 lower that goes straight into the hydraulic engine mount. So let's get this off, make sure we don't see too much movement in the engine, recheck those jacks underneath if needed, and get to the hydraulic mount. Okay, they're all loose, so far so good, not much movement. Let's just keep on going with that. There is a little bit of movement here. I will go underneath and just raise up those jacks a smidgen more. Okay, raised up just a touch. Let's crack on. And there we have it. Okay, now we can see our prize, the hydraulic engine mount there. Not sure if it's obvious on the video, but that mount has collapsed. There are the mounting bolts. 1, 2, 3, 15 mil, all the same size, I believe. Let's get them out. Three 15 mil bolts, all the same size for the main hydraulic engine mount. Not much room between the bushing and the mount itself. As a rule of thumb, you should be able to at least get a pen in through there. Collapsed quite badly. This will be the original one. So let's get the new part in and get those bolts tightened up. Here's the new mount, Berry Motor Group here in Melbourne. 175 bucks, I believe this one was. I'll put some part numbers down below, but that's the new one. As you can see, the gap between the bushing and the mount, quite a lot bigger than the one we've just taken out. So let's get this one back in, 3 15 mil bolts. Okay, I believe the torque specs for these are 60 foot-pounds. We'll do them up as tight as we can. I'm sure that'll be fine. Job's a good one. Hydraulic engine mount fitted. All right, next part of the reassembly, the engine mount bracket itself, remembering that the shorter bolt goes through the hydraulic mount. The other three are the same, 15 mil, and again, I believe 60 foot-pounds for the torque. Okay, I've got the engine mount bracket installed loosely onto that hydraulic mount. As you can see, quite a bit of room with the engine and the mount. I think just due to the fact that that new hydraulic mount is quite a bit higher than the old collapsed one. I'll get back underneath and pump those jacks up a little bit more to try and get it more level there. Okay, because that new mount is quite a bit higher than the old collapsed one, I've had to jack up the engine just a touch to get that plate to fit straight. I'm going to try and slowly tighten up to torque 60 foot-pounds. These ones, the mount hole is a little bit offset. I think once I can get the top bracket in and manipulate the jacks underneath, it should all come forward and align. Let's see how we go with that plan. Okay, top mount in, reasonably torqued. There is quite a mismatch between the mount and the hole. And here's how far we're off. I'd say 5 to 10 mil off the mounts there. Let's lower that jack and see if it helps. We've still got quite a distance to go. I think we're gonna loosen that bracket again, try and align it, and go from there. All right, that took a little bit of messing around to try and get the bracket aligned. Ended up putting the hydraulic mount bolt in first. That allowed enough play to move the bracket around, align the other bolts with their mounting holes and get them up. So let's get them up to spec. As I said, 60 foot-pounds. We'll do it as tight as we can. Job will be good. All right, next step, to get the upper torque rod back in place, back in situ, 2 bolts. Remember, the longer one is the front and the shorter one is the rear. Just snugged up the front one, short one to the rear. All right, we're gonna have to loosen that front one again. The alignment's a little bit off, so let's get that loose, bit of movement, and hopefully we can secure the rear bolt. All right, we're getting there. Upper torque rod installed, aligned. That hydraulic engine mount bracket was a bit of a pain to align. Had to loosen it up and put some force on it to get those holes to align. But that's now in, torqued up, and just down in there is the new hydraulic mount. So let's get the coolant tank secured, the level sensor connected and button this thing up. Sensor back in. Hook the wire around the securing pin. Make sure you align the bracket there, and it's the 8mm bolt. Alrighty, there we have it. Upper torque rod and hydraulic engine mount reinstalled on the Volvo V70 P3. As I said, very similar for all the other models in this year range. I will lower those jacks, re-torque the bolts, and just make sure everything's nice and tight. Pretty quick and simple job. Probably took half an hour, 45 minutes, and well worth the result. So if you're having dramas with your mounts, if they're cracking, if you're hearing a grinding noise, especially when you're in reverse, check them out. May well be your problem. All right, there we have it. Upper torque rod replaced. Lower hydraulic engine mount replaced. Jacks lowered. It's sitting on its own weight at the moment. Bolts re-torqued. Job's a good one. And now for the best part of a good job well done, the reward at the end. Cheers.